for tuning in. This is Kathy, and today I'll be sharing 3 cards using one stamp from the B-Day stamp set by Pink and Main. And I thought about having 3 separate videos, but since I colored all of the bees the exact same way with the exact same colors, I thought I would just lump them all into one video. I'm going to leave the coloring in for the very first bee and also the coloring for all of the balloons. The coloring was really very simple, and the colors I use will pop up in the top left-hand corner for you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and play some music while I finish up this little bee, and I'll be back to put the card together. After I finished coloring the bee, I ran him through my die cut machine with the coordinating die, and I had a piece of yellow cardstock that I cut down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I adhered that to the front of a top folding A2 sized white note card. I also used the largest die from the Cloudy Frames die set to create a frame, and I cut it once from black and white patterned paper and once from white cardstock, so I could have that white piece be an inset for the frame. I put a whole bunch of foam tape on the back of the frame and adhered that to the front of the card. And it was okay that I had some foam tape sticking out there because I was planning on popping up the white inset piece anyway. Next, I adhered the bee straight down with a tape runner. And yes, I used the happy birthday dies from Pink and Main as well, and I forgot to turn the camera on while I was doing the words. Basically what I did was I cut the happy birthday dies 3 times, once from yellow cardstock and twice from white cardstock. I stacked them up, and so the card would read Happy B-Day. I just cut off the first part of birthday. I adhered the die cut words with my liquid glue, and then I noticed that the feet of my little bee were not adhered, so I just used a tiny little bit of liquid glue to get those to stick down as well. The next thing I did was put a few strips of foam tape down in the center on top of the yellow panel and placed the cardstock with the bee on it directly on top of the foam tape. And now might be a good time to mention that all of the white cardstock I'm using is 80-pound Nina Solar White cardstock, and the ink that I used to stamp the bees is My Favorite Things Extreme Black Hybrid ink. Anyway, back to this card. To finish it up, I added a little bit of glitter to his wings using my Wink of Stella glitter pen. And then to bring out a little bit more red, I glued down quite a few red sequins to finish up the first card. Moving on to card number 2, I jump right in and start coloring the balloon. And with that, I'm going to play some music for you to enjoy while I do that, and I'll be back to put this card together. After I finished coloring, I did run him through my die cut machine with the coordinating die as well and started to work on the background. I used the second largest die from the Cloudy Frames die set and cut it once from white cardstock and once from black and white patterned cardstock. I wanted to have a hint of color behind the bee, so I used my makeup brush to blend a little bit of cracked pistachio oxide ink on that. And then I adhered that flat to a piece of patterned paper that I cut down to 4 by 5 1/4. Next, I put a whole bunch of foam tape around this frame as well and adhered that on top of the ink blended panel. Next, I added some foam tape to the bee and added him to the front of the card panel. Then I adhered the patterned paper to a piece of dark blue cardstock. I know in the video it looks like it's black, but it's not, it's navy blue. Anyway, added the patterned paper to the navy blue cardstock, which was just slightly larger, and adhered that to the front of a top folding A2 size note card. I added a little bit of glitter to his wings with my Wink of Stella glitter pen, and that finishes up the second card. Moving on to the third and final card, I did want to create a nice cloudy background so it looked like my little bee was floating in the air with his balloon. So I started with a piece of white cardstock and I used tumbled glass distress oxide ink and started to blend the clouds using a little cloud stencil. And I suddenly realized after I did this first layer of clouds that I needed to stop ink blending and get my little bee stamped on there because I wanted him to be flat on the front of the card. I didn't want to run him through my die cut machine with the coordinating die. And in order for him to appear to be in front of the clouds, I needed to stamp him first. So I pulled out the stamp platform and inked him up, stamped him down with my black ink, and I had created a mask for him, and I just stamped him really quick on a piece of basic printer paper and used Zig 2A glue pen. I let that dry completely because it becomes repositionable once it's dry. After I had the masks in place, I finished up the stenciling and then moved on to the coloring. For this balloon, I only used 3 colors, so I actually saturated the cardstock with the lightest color, G00, and then I started adding in the darker colors. I just continued going over the balloon until I was happy with the blend. Next, it was time to put the card together. I used a strip of green cardstock so I could have a border between the patterned paper and the stamped cardstock. I used a tiny bit of adhesive to hold the patterned paper and the green cardstock to the stamped panel, just so I could run it through my die cut machine with a stitched rectangle die. I like to have the stitching go all the way around. Next, I adhered that to another piece of green cardstock. I had used another stitched rectangle die for that, and it was just slightly larger. And then adhered that to the front of a top folding A2 size card base. Decided to add a few of those cute little bees. So I stamped those in and colored them. Added some bee trails with a fine tip black marker. The next thing I did was add a little bit of sparkle to the wings of the bees and the balloon. And then I finished it up with stamping Be Happy in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And to add a little bit of movement, I just did 2 small little dashes by his wing and his foot. That finishes up the third and final card for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.